So, welcome, as I mentioned. To quickly introduce myself, my name is Jamana, and I have the utmost privilege of working with a wonderful group of people as the chair of the Student Affairs Committee for the Society of Conservation Biology North America, or the SCBNA. For those who might not know what the SCBNA is, it's a regional group of the Global Society for Conservation Biology, and it's dedicated to advancing the science and practice of conserving biodiversity across North America. It does so by supporting students and professionals through networking, mentorship, and skill building opportunities like this webinar series. The SCBNA also holds conferences in North America every 2 years. The next one is coming up next summer in Milwaukee. And after this quick intro, I'll pop in a link in the chat that'll take you to the conference website. Uh, and if you happen to be interested in learning more about the SCBNA or in becoming a member, you can scan this QR code to check out our website. I'll leave it up for just a second. As I mentioned, today's webinar is hosted by the Student Affairs Committee as part of our ongoing commitment to professional development and science communication. The subcommittee seeks to organize activities for students and early career professionals in conservation. If the work of the Student Affairs Committee sounds enticing and you're an SCBNA member who would like to work with this great team on developing student programming, please feel free to send an email to the address below and we can add you to the email list. Another way to get involved is by contributing to a crowdsourced list of student opportunities, including assistantships, fellowships, and scholarships, all of which are not reliant on federal funding. So feel free to scan the QR code. We love QR codes here. So scan the one on the top to contribute any opportunities that you may be aware of. And the QR code, you can scan that one at the bottom to view the current list that's available. I can also share the links to these QR codes in the chat as well. So now, without further ado, we are thrilled to welcome Carrie Stiles and Adrian Marvin. Carrie Stiles is a Senior Program Officer and Miradi Project Manager at Foundations of Success, or FOS. Since joining FOS in 2020, Carrie has used her landscape architecture and environmental planning background to support partners in using Miradi and adaptive management for conservation. Her career includes over a decade working on Puget Sound recovery, most recently leading the adaptive systems of the Puget Sound Partnership. Her work also includes extensive experience teaching, collaborating, and exploring the wilds of the Pacific Northwest. Adrienne joined Foundation of Success in 2017. She grew up and is currently based near Washington, D.C. And Adrienne came to the team after completing her capstone project at a reserve in Mozambique, where she developed a monitoring and evaluation framework for their community outreach programs. Her previous experience in leadership at nonprofits brought her to FOS with a strong understanding of the value of good planning and adaptive management. So thank you all again for being here for this conversation about Miradi and its use in conservation project adaptive management. And we welcome Carrie and Adrian. I shall stop sharing.
Great. We are super happy to be here. So let me pull up our slide deck here. Hold on one second. All right. Can someone confirm that you're seeing Miradi software slide, initial slide?
Thumbs up, thumbs up.
Thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay, great. Excellent. Let me hide my controls and then see a little bit here. Cool, thumbs up. All right. Okay, so Adrian and I are super excited to be here. I'll turn it over to Adrian just in a moment here to say a few words if she wants to. But first, just want to give you a little orientation to what we think we're doing here today. And then, yeah, so here's what we think we're doing today. So we're here representing Miradi Conservation Software, and the plan for today is to really introduce you to what Miradi conservation software is, how it works, how it supports conservation around the world for a variety of different types of conservation practitioners and conservation related organizations. We're then going to do a live demonstration about how the tools work. We'll give you some examples from the field where we work with conservation teams of different types around the world and how they're using Miradi, just to give you a sense of how it can be used. And then we want to get you started with Miradi if you want to. We can, there's a 60-day free trial, so we can get you signed into Miradi, get you started, give you some practice projects. So that is our plan for today. And we're splitting it sort of half and half, so maybe 45 minutes or more if you have a lot of questions. We really would like this to be interactive. So as we're going, post questions in the chat and we can answer them in chat or take the time to answer them live and develop, bring up other examples. So please use the chat liberally to ask questions and we'll respond to them. So the idea is to take maybe 45 minutes or so to do the introduction, the overview, the live demonstration, examples from the field, and then spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes if you want to get signed into Miradi and start using it. So again, we hope it'll be driven by you all, whatever you all want most to cover. Um, but before we get actually, did I put that in here? Oh no, okay. Let me just say a little bit about who we are, FOS or Foundations of Success, and then we're going to ask you a couple questions to make sure we know who our audience is and how we should package this presentation. So, who is FOS? Well, we're a very small nonprofit. We work globally. We'll say a little bit about that more in a minute. But our mission, we don't do conservation ourselves, although many of us have come from a conservation background. But our mission is really to amplify the collective impact of the global conservation community by working with conservation practitioners and teams. So we do that. We amplify the impact of the conservation efforts by providing training and coaching to teams. We have an R&D arm where we develop frameworks and tools and best practices. We also organize, coordinate, facilitate collaborative learning networks over a variety of scales and topics. We are really committed to building capacity for the future, both in training students and professionals and teams, as well as building those tools to increase our collective capacity. And specifically related to this presentation today, we're the owners of Miradi software. It is open source software, but we are owners of the software. We lead the development of the software. We have an engineering team, and we provide a lot of support for teams to use Miradi and adapt it for their own needs. So that's who we are at Foundation of Success, or FOS. We are a collective. We have really four arms in the FOS US arm. So we don't have a home base. We're all virtual. In the US, we have, I don't know, Adrian, what, 10 people right now ish? 10 people based in the US. We have a similar sized team based in Europe. We have a small team that works primarily in Latin America. They're based in Latin America, work globally like the rest of us. And then we have one colleague in South Africa who works all over the place, is super busy all over Africa and globally. And then, yeah, Adrian and I are both from the FOS US team. So that's who we are and why we're here. So, Bernie, could you launch the two polls, or at least launch the first one? Or did I just give you this one? I just gave you this one. So, okay, so if you could put in the chat the response to these two questions, sort of who are you and where are you? Where are you located? And then what's your conservation experience? And then there's a poll there with two questions where we're trying to understand how much you know about Miradi, if anything, and how much you know about the conservation standards. So please respond to those and then, yeah, drop a little chat to tell us a bit more about who you are. And I know everyone's responding to the poll right now. Can anyone see the responses, or is it just the host who can see the responses?
I can see people responding.
Yeah, I can too.
Great. So what I'm seeing right now in the poll, we have a range from total newbies, sort of a balance between total newbies with a few folks who have an account but haven't used it much, we at least have one person who's used Miradi and would love to learn more. So we have really a wide range. So that's great. And then for the conservation standards, sounds like we have some people who have never heard of the conservation standards, and then a few people who are vaguely familiar or have used the conservation standards. Okay, that's super helpful. So I think so we'll provide the full overview of the standards and what they are and how they relate to Miradi, and then the full overview of Miradi, since it sounds like we have quite a wide range of people. So for those of you who are familiar with the standards and are familiar with Miradi already, please feel free to chime in as we're going along and add your thoughts in the chat if we miss something that you think is really important. And then I'm enjoying reading the chat here. So super excited. We've got Canada, we've got Maine, India, Chile. Excellent. Okay. Parks Canada. Excellent. Okay, so I just called out a few, but this is really super useful seeing all these. So thank you for dropping this information in here. It'll help us make sure this is as relevant as possible. Great. Okay, I think we can end the poll. And all right, let's get into what Miradi is and where it comes from and why it's useful for conservation practitioners. And again, if you need more clarification, drop things in the chat, and Adrian will be responding while I'm presenting, and I will respond while Adrian's presenting. So Miradi Conservation Management Software, we think it's pretty important to mention right off the bat, it is entirely designed by conservation practitioners for conservation practitioners. So we have a couple of engineers who they exclusively work on environmental technology tools. So they work in that sphere. And those of us who are on the project management team, on the support team, on the sales team, all of that, we're all in the conservation sector. So this is entirely designed to support and enhance conservation management and conservation work. So it's designed for us. And Miradi is specifically designed to help teams implement the conservation standards or similar adaptive management systems. So we'll get back into how exactly does Miradi help teams implement the conservation standards in a moment. But first, let me say a little bit about what the conservation standards are. And it looked like many of you were familiar with the standards, so we won't linger too long on this. But so the conservation standards are developed and curated by the Conservation Measures Partnership. So CMP, the Conservation Measures Partnership, is a global collective of organizations, both organizations that do conservation in a variety of ways, as well as those that fund conservation. And this group of organizations is really committed to improving the practice of conservation by improving the development and use of measures that help us understand really, are we doing the right things and are they working? So this collective was originally a few members of organizations let me start that over. A few individuals from some of the larger global conservation organizations got together about 20 years ago and discuss the fact that, most conservation teams are facing similar types of challenges. Doing our conservation work, it's typically taking place in complex and dynamic systems. In conservation, we usually need to deal with ongoing unpredictable change. We need to innovate, develop new strategies. And conservation teams are usually working in an environment where they're lacking complete information. You often have to take action in the face of uncertainty without the information that you need to make really clear decisions. And you need to report performance to funders and supporters. So there's some common challenges that all conservation teams are facing. And we all have the need to improve and learn so that our work becomes increasingly effective. There's really two types of questions that teams are grappling with when they're doing conservation. First, status questions, really how are species and ecosystems doing, and are we taking the right conservation actions to conserve them? So those are real status questions. And then effectiveness questions. Are our actions leading to desired results? So this is the information we need in order to do conservation better. And what these organizations that got together about 20 years ago found, and this is still the case in many cases, is that although these organizations are all working on the same thing, they often use a different language and different way of speaking about similar topics. So for example, biodiversity targets or conservation targets or values were called a variety of things across these major conservation organizations and of course a lot of the other partners. Threats can be called pressures or threats. Objectives or goals are called milestones or targets or project targets. So there's really this challenge with using different language to talk about the same things, which really makes it very difficult to share learning across organizations. So these organizations got together, did a bunch of research on other measurement systems in related and different fields. So you can see the names of the different types of fields that these folks researched, did some really comprehensive research on other measurement systems, and based on that research, developed the first iteration of the conservation standards, which is really a set of best practices, tools, standards, language to help conservation practitioners do their work in a more consistent way so that we could share our learning and improve our impact across the globe and within teams. So the first version of the standards was published in 2004, and we are now on the fifth version that just came out, I think in May or June. So Miradi, let me say, well, we'll just skip quickly past that. So Miradi is really designed to help teams implement the steps of the conservation standards and develop the most critical information that is needed to adaptively manage conservation projects. So Miradi is also designed to work within a broader IT ecosystem. So there's no silver bullet out there, as I'm sure all of you know. There's no one software tool, one technology that is going to do everything for you. So Miradi is really designed to work within this broader landscape of technology that we all work in. So within any conservation organization, for example, if the work that you're doing, the real conservation day-to-day work that you're doing is represented by these steps of the standards down here, any organization is also going to need systems to manage their fundraising, manage their finances, manage their people. And most organizations invest a lot in specific technology, specific applications or platforms to manage this information. But historically, and still in many cases, organizations use Microsoft products, email, PDFs, PowerPoints, Excel spreadsheets, Access database, like some hodgepodge of those tools to manage their core business. So what Miradi is really trying to do is provide a platform for managing our most critical core conservation information in one place so that we can share it with those other systems and really make use of that information to inform decisions. So Miradi is not intended to do everything for you, but it is really intended to fill a critical gap in conservation. So how does Miradi do that? So I'm going to go through 5 or 6 slides here just to give an overview of how Miradi supports conservation and adaptive management. And then I'm going to turn it over to Adrian to get started with our live demo of how things actually work in Miradi online. So Miradi really helps teams implement the conservation standards at 3 different levels. It helps individual teams collaborate on managing individual conservation projects more effectively. So a conservation project could be management of an individual protected area, or it could be a conservation plan to conserve or recover a species. It could be a conservation project focused on really reducing an individual threat or type of threat, like wildlife tracking, what am I saying? CWT.
Wildlife trafficking.
There you go, wildlife trafficking. I'm like, it's not wildlife tracking, wildlife trafficking. So an individual conservation project is really the entire set of data that you need to design and implement and manage and track one conservation effort at whatever scale your team decides to define it. So you can manage individual conservation projects. Miradi is also designed to help teams manage multiple projects, multiple related projects. So oftentimes, for example, an organization that manages multiple protected areas or multiple land areas, you want to manage all of those protected areas in a coordinated program so that you can really maximize your investments and maximize your impact. Or if you're an organization like a zoo that's working on multiple individual species, you have conservation plans for each species, but you really want to manage and coordinate your work across all of those species or all of the species or protected areas within a certain geography, for example. So Miradi is designed to help teams really coordinate that work across multiple efforts to, again, maximize the impact of their investments. And then we're really committed at Miradi and within the conservation standards community more broadly to make sure that we're sharing our learning not only within teams and within projects and programs, but globally. So how do we share what we're learning with everyone else to improve our collective impact? So Miradi really has sort of 6 areas of tools to help teams develop and manage their work. This is following the steps of the conservation standards. So we provide a set of tools for developing narrative content, map content, lists of people and teams. So it's sort of that higher level, project level or program level information covering the scope and vision of your work, as well as defining those people that should have access to your project or really responsible for implementing your work or the work that's covered in your conservation plan. So the scope, vision, team, and partners. Miradi has a set of tools for helping you assess the situation. So the assessment step is really about getting very clear about what the problem is that you're trying to address. So these diagram tools help you map out, really develop a logic model or conceptual model, identifying the things you care about conserving. So on the right here, you've got your conservation targets. The threats here in pink, what are the threats that are degrading those targets? What are the factors? So these orange and brown boxes, what are the factors contributing to those problems that you really need to address with strategies? And then in yellow here, what are the strategies that you're going to implement in order to reduce the threats or address any of the factors that are causing problems? So there's a set of tools to help you develop and manage those models describing your situation. And Miradi on the back end is a relational database. So as you're building these models in the whiteboards, these box and arrow diagrams, Miradi is constructing a relational database on the back end for you so that you can do a lot more useful analysis. It's not a static diagram. It's not like Miro or Mural where you're just drawing a diagram on a canvas. It's actually building the database on the back end for you so that you can do a lot more useful analysis and work with it, such as rating the impact of your threats, which are the listed here, the pink boxes, on your targets, your conservation targets, which are across here in the green ovals up here. So you build the diagram, but then you have all these other tools that you can use in order to manage your data, do analyses, etc. There's another set of tools for step 2. So there's a set of diagram tools that allow you to build what we call a results chain. And a results chain is just a series of results linked in a chain that describe the theory of change about how your strategies in yellow are intended to deliver results and ultimately improve the health of your conservation targets or your human well-being targets. So there's a set of tools that allow you to build these diagrams. And then we have a bunch of related data within Miradi that allows you to define the indicators we're going to use to track progress, report on how you're doing, and develop the information needed to really adaptively manage your theories of change based on whether or not you're achieving the results you want to see and doing the actions that you said you needed to do. So there's tools within Miradi that allow you to build work plans based on your theories of change. So you can assign people, you can develop expenses over 1 year, over multiple years, you can develop budgets. And then again, you can track progress to see if you're actually implementing the actions you said you wanted to invest in. And then we have a variety of tools for helping you make sense of data. There's some pretty basic charting tools in Miradi, but we also have Spreadsheet type views that you can totally customize or export to Excel. We have an API, if that makes sense to anyone, but basically it lets you pull data out of Miradi and work with it in other systems like Power BI to make nice interactive dashboards or bring it into other sophisticated analysis tools. So Miradi really helps you develop the information that you need and manage it in a way that allows you to analyze and work with it elsewhere. And then again, we encourage teams to make as much of their data public as possible so that we can share and learn from one another. We also have a database within Miradi called Conservation Actions and Measures Library, which has a set of common strategies and actions within the conservation sector with associated theories of change and associated activities as well as indicators and objectives. These are derived from conservation practitioners around the world. They're based on things that work in the conservation sector. And within this library, you can actually copy these theories of change into your own projects and use those as the basis for your own conservation work rather than having to start from scratch. I'll just do one last slide here, and then I think I'll turn it over to Adrian after that. So I just wanted to note, just coming back to the idea that Miradi is not a silver bullet, no technology is. So we really designed it to try and make sure it plays nicely with other systems. So you can work offline in Miradi desktop. If you work in an area that does not have great internet access, or you work with teams, as many of us do around the world, that are often out in the field or in areas without great internet access. You can work offline. You can download your entire Miradi project to desktop and work on it on your hard drive on your computer. You can export those diagrams we were looking at in an editable format, a vector file. For those of you who know what that is, you can totally edit it, use it in posters or other printed materials. We have a lot of tools that allow you to export different types of spreadsheets, including with different amounts of data from Miradi, so you can bring those into other systems or do more sophisticated analyses. We have tools that allow you to develop formatted reports in Word so that you can run the same report across multiple projects if you need to, and you can totally customize and design those yourself so they look however you want them to. You can import data from spreadsheets using bulk import. And then, like I said before, we have an API that allows you to dynamically bring the information out of Miradi into other great dashboarding systems like Microsoft Power BI. So definitely designed to work with other systems that most of us use in the conservation sector. And I don't think these tools are as interesting to this group. So before we go to the live demo, I might just open it up and see if there's any questions or comments before we get into the real meat of how it works. Okay. Do you want to take it away, Adrian?
I sure do. Hi, everyone. So I am going to show you Miradi itself. And I'm going to focus on some of the diagram. You guys are seeing the right screen, right? Yeah, okay, cool. I'm going to focus on showing you some of the getting started pieces of it, but it sounds like a lot of you from the poll are pretty familiar with conservation standards. So if there are any particular features or things that you want to see how they are translated from conservation standards into Miradi, let me know, and I'd be happy to kind of deep dive some of those features. Um, but what you're seeing right now is our landing space. So as you create an account, you go into My Projects, you'll have the ability to add a new project. And as you name it and everything, this is what it will create, a little project for you. And you'll land on this page where you have the ability to create a snapshot of the work that you're doing. You get some project details. We have some really basic mapping features. some key information about the timeline of the project and any data that's been entered here. You might have some sort of a brief snapshot of how things are going. Then we're going to go over to the situation assessment. So as Carrie was telling us earlier, the first step in conservation standards is your situation analysis. So this is the diagramming feature that allows you to create that situation assessment in Miradi. So I am right now on our Eastern Bay project, which when you create your account, this is an open project that you'll be able to revisit yourself and check out anytime. And it's got a lot of material already preloaded. It's a totally fictional place. It's just made up, as is all of the data that's in it. So nothing secret or crazy in here. But it gives you a really good place to see how all the different features kind of come together and poke around. So in the diagramming space, I think it's pretty straightforward actually. So you pull the little puzzle piece space over here, and you have all of the different shapes and tools that you'll be familiar with from the conservation standards. This is actually a really sneaky way to introduce conservation standards without having to have everyone trained up too, because a lot of the pieces, the elements are already here, and you use them just by using the tool itself. So, for instance, if I wanted to add a new conservation target here to my sharks and my seagrass beds, I can just drag and drop a new conservation target. It'll preload it and come up with a place to type in, and I'll just write rays in addition to sharks. And when I hover over the shape here, you'll see that it has these little shadow shapes. And so these are all of the child factors, all of the information that you can fill in about that target or any of these other fields. And that's really how you build out the relational database piece of it that Carrie was describing. So each of these factors has a factors properties section, which you can go into either here or directly on the factor itself. And it pops out this space where you can fill in a bunch of information about that factor. So for my rays, I might add in more details about what types of rays. I can enter the viability status here. So talk about how those rays are doing on the ground. I can come over to some of these other factors. I can add a goal. I can add an indicator. You have to actually add the button. I'll come back to the goals and indicators in a second, but just to say that there's a lot of information that you can then store behind each of these factors. Miradi is also, it's a brainstorming space for you with your team to create a situation model or results chain, but it can also be used as an important communications tool. And so one thing that I really like to point out to people as they're starting to get into the software is this visibility section. So in this section, you can turn on and off all of the different factors. So it gives you a way to kind of zoom in with the team on specific parts of the model that you might be explaining or that you might be kind of trying to describe. The other cool thing that it has is this tag feature, which you can turn on and off. And so rather than doing it by a whole set of factors, you might group a set of factors that includes drivers and threats and a target. And you can turn those on and off. So it gives you an ability to sort of flash, let's see this one, to flash just a segment of the model so you can really dig into those pieces. Any thoughts or questions about the situation model diagram? Okay. And then I will move us on to results chains. So you can get there either by clicking this little tag here, the results chains, or there's a whole nother tab at the top with the theory of change in it. And I will point out that in these different tabs, so in the situation assessment tab, I'll just jump back quickly. This is the model space, but then for the other pieces of the conservation standards, there are these sub tabs under the main tab. So there's a space for you to to capture the information from your viability analysis. There's a space to capture your threat analysis, and each of these pieces, each of these sub tabs, you can open up and edit there too. And again, that's the relational database part of it. That's what really makes Miradi a much deeper tool than trying to build these models in, say, Neuro or Mural. So coming to our theory of change here, this is our results chain. Again, the modeling itself looks really similar. You've got your puzzle pieces here. You can build all the different types of factors to build your results chain. You can tag those factors. So it's really functionally very similar to the situation model, but you will notice that the factors that are available are different because now you're working in the results chain space. And so you're not going to have the drivers or the threats. You're going to have threat reductions and intermediate results. Then as you build out the theory of change, you're also going to want to be able to add activities. So you'll notice that these yellow boxes represent the activities that a team would implement in order to achieve the results that they've outlined. And then you've also got the ability to add objectives and indicators to the intermediate results to help develop out your MEL plan. And so this is the point where I'll come back to. I kind of showed you or flashed up really quickly the goal and the indicators here. But there are a couple of ways to add objectives and indicators to a results chain. And so I'll just click. So this is a new result here. It doesn't have an objective yet. You'll see it just has the shadow. I'm just going to click on that to add my objective. And what it gives you is the ability to create an objective in several ways. So one, you could just start from scratch and add a completely new one. You can also copy an objective from an objective that's on another result. And so that can be really useful if you're trying to build a big project and you've already created an objective, a similar objective in a different results chain, you can pull that over. And one of the cool tools that I really like is this new smart objective wizard that we've developed. And so maybe your team is new to building SMART goals, or it's just been a journey to kind of get there. This tool is really helpful in keeping in mind what are the key elements of a SMART objective. And so it walks you through step by step, what type of objective are you trying to build? Are you looking for numerical data? Are you looking for qualitative information? When should that objective be achieved? And what change do you want to see? What metrics are you looking for? So as you start to fill this in, just say October 10th, you'll see that the system actually builds the objective out for you as you fill in the different elements. And it even runs a little check for you to see if it's actually fully smart, which you get by really filling in all of the fields. And then when you click next, I'm not going to do it on this project, but when you click next, it will add that objective directly to that factor and automatically. Sorry, I do want to cancel. It will also help you build out the indicators. That Smart Objective tool will also help you develop an appropriate indicator for the objective. I'll just show you really quickly. There's also the different ways. There's not because it's part of the Smart Objective tool, there's no smart indicator specifically, but you can still create a new or add a copy of an indicator. And again, as you fill in each of these the child factors, they all have different spaces. So you can fill in a lot of information just about this indicator. What's the unit? What's the details? Do you have any comments? What are the measurements and the future status that you're looking for? You can add classifications and related strategies. And all of this just gives you the ability to build a really comprehensive monitoring plan for your conservation work and make sure that everything is related and consistent across each of your strategies. So I'll stop talking there and I'll hand it back to Carrie for the next live demo.
Thanks, Adrian. So while I'm pulling up my screen, just want to see if there's any questions about sort of that base level of creating information.
Yeah,
Casey.
Casey.
Yeah, sorry, slow here. If you wouldn't mind just taking one step back for a minute, it would be helpful. We used the Conservation Measure Partnership threats and actions lexicon in our State Wildlife Action Plan, and just how does that relate to the conservation measures that you started off with, like the bigger system of things? Does that question make sense? Okay.
Yeah, Carrie, do you want to take that or do you want me to do it?
Oh, why don't you do it? Yeah, since yeah.
Okay. Um, yeah, so the lexicon, it 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 helps you, I think, sort of get an understanding of what, so you use the threats and actions both. Yeah. So the threats classification gives you a sense of what are the different threats that are facing conservation sort of across the world. So folks, IUCN, I think, got together along with CMP to think about what are the different threats that conservation groups are facing. They categorized them and they built out this list. That list is incorporated into Miradi. Carrie's not showing it right now, but she probably could really quickly. That list
Yeah.
is incorporated into Miradi, so you can actually tag your threats as you're building out your models. And what that gives you the ability to do is sort of look across your projects or across the results chains in your project to see where are people working on similar threats. And it's nice because as you're building the diagrams, you want to name the threat something that really makes sense in your context. But then you also want to be able to have some sort of standardization to kind of look across what are the results chains, what are the strategies that people are using to address that threat and have that standardized. And so we did build that in as sort of a filter that you can look through. Similarly with the actions, they went through, they built the list of actions. It's a really good way to help you think about what are the potential strategies that you could implement to address certain types of threats or in certain contexts. And again, you want to call it what makes sense in your context, but we use it in Miradi as a filter to show you where people are taking similar actions. They may not be similar people. Does that answer your question? I got a little rambly there.
Yeah, that's helpful. And maybe Carrie too. It looks like you were headed towards pointing out in the standards. Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, so building on what Adrian just said, and then I'll also come back in this next part of the live demo to show you how you can make use of those classifications. So what Casey is referring to is, a standard taxonomy for addressing that problem of using different names for the same thing, right? So we can learn within teams or across teams. So the threat taxonomy, which version 4.0 was just released, and it was a joint product of IUCN and the Conservation Measures Partnership. So they collaborated to produce the latest version of the threats taxonomy. So you would apply it to your threats that you're including here in this assessment stage. And the way that teams that we're familiar with use it, just for example, from my Puget Sound partnership work, state government here in Washington State, we have a lot of agriculture in Puget Sound, and there are different types of agriculture. And oftentimes people in the north part of the sound will refer to a certain type of agriculture in one way, and then in the southern part of the sound, they'll refer to it in a different way. But if we allow them in Miradi or in any conservation plan to use their own language for that threat, for example, that resonates with their constituencies, their partners that they work with, we can then tag it on the back end in Miradi using the standard terminology so that we can do broader analyses to see who's working on similar threats across the entire region. But then the teams can still use their own language, the language that works within their context, to make effective progress on their work. So that threat taxonomy really helps you standardize your language on the back end so that you can do much more effective analyses and reporting, both within your teams or across the global conservation community to share learning. So that standard classification is here at the threat stage. The other one you're talking about is the action classification. And typically people apply it either at the level of a high level strategy, what's the overall strategy or high level action that we're implementing. Some teams will apply it at the level of a specific activity. So they might have a high level strategy that has both outreach and education type actions, or that it might also have some research actions. It might also have some regulatory improvement type actions. So you can apply that action taxonomy here in step 2 to the strategies and activities that you're implementing, so that you can then, again, do a query across all of your work and see if people are implementing similar actions across the different teams or globally. Where are people doing the same types of actions, and are they seeing similar results or different results, or what's working or what's not? So the classifications would be applied here in steps 1 and 2. They set you up so you can do the rest of it effectively. And that's what we were going to show you next.
Thank you for that. I wanted to be sure I was thinking about it right. And yes, that was helpful to be sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me also just, before we go into how Miradi supports that, let me just show you. So conservationstandards.org, if you Google conservationstandards.org, what you'll see is right in the middle here is the standards and practices themselves. So if you go into this website, the conservation standards, you'll be able to download the standards. You'll see a library of resources, a wide variety of types of resources, best practices, tools, articles on what's working and what's not, behavior change strategies, all kinds of stuff, all about, all related to improving the practice of conservation here with standards and tools and best practices. There's 2 networks of people and organizations that are involved in curating that, sharing this information, and learning from one another. The Conservation Measures Partnership that we mentioned, you can enter that. That's a group of organizational partners. And then the Conservation Coaches Network is a group of individual practitioners that use the conservations to enhance their own work or partner organizations. So just wanted to point out that set of resources there, which we can come back to later if we want to. Okay, so coming back to another version of the same project that Adrian was working on, but this one actually has more data in it so that we can show you how you use theories of change. So coming to the results chain. So really the core of Miradi is the theory of change, or the results chain diagram that, as Adrian pointed out, captures your strategies that you're trying to implement with associated activities, the results that they're trying to deliver along a theory of change, and the ultimate conservation targets or values that you're trying to protect. So your theory of change, you might have multiple theories of change in your project. We really build out, as Adrian showed, the work plan, which is these yellow and purple bubbles here. So what is the work that you need to invest in at the level of activities and tasks in order to deliver results? And then what are the indicators and objectives or monitoring tools that you use to assess whether or not you're making progress? So if you follow the conservation standards or adaptive management best practices and you use Miradi, your work plan is built on your theory of change so that you can be sure that what you're investing in is really tied to delivering the results that you think you need to achieve. And your monitoring plan is tied directly to your theory of change. So in Miradi, we have 2 sections for that. We have a brand new set of work planning tools that, I will be honest, none of you will be able to see at this point. They're out with our beta testers right now. You can do a lot of this stuff without this particular set of tools, but we do have a set of tools in Miradi that allow you to, as Adrian showed, define your project timeframes, but then you can set up work plans for specific timeframes, whether it's a 3-year plan or a budget forecast or a 1-year monthly work plan or a quarterly work plan. So you can develop work plans, budget forecasts at a variety of timescales over a variety of time periods, all tied to those theories of change. So for example, If I go into this is an old work plan, it just has lots of data, which is why we bring it up. So for example, in a 2018 to 2020 work plan, I'm going to go to full screen view here. You can see that for a strategy, for example, a strategy about improving or reducing the impact of rats on seabirds. There's trying to develop a policy to mandate rat barriers on visiting boats. You've got all of your activities and your monitoring activities and your tasks. And then you can see the assignments. You can manage work units here. You can see the roll up across the entire work plan. You can see how you're doing on those work plans. And then Casey, to your question, you can see in some cases, the team has classified a strategy based on that CMP conservation actions taxonomy. So you could do a query across your projects and see, oh, where are all the similar actions here? We just don't have these classified here, but I could come in here and choose laws, regulations, and codes. There we go. So you can develop work plans at a variety of scales, monthly, quarterly, annual. This one, for example, is just a 1-year work plan where you've got work unit assignments across 1 year. You can also develop expenses associated with those theories of change. This one doesn't have any example expenses in it, apparently. So again, the goal here is to develop work plans that are directly tied to your theories of change so that you know what you're investing in are the best actions to deliver the results that you want to see. So you can track progress on those in a variety of ways. Coming over to the progress tracking tab, we support tracking progress at many levels. You can track progress on the overall project. So how are we doing on the overall project? And you can track many points over time. It's pretty simple to add and update. We have a standard set of values here. You can also customize these if you need to, but we have a standard set of values. You report at what date, what's the status. You can capture information about details, lessons learned, and next steps. So very easy to add another progress update. And then coming along, we break it out by different types of things that you might want to track in your conservation plan. So the actions progress tracking, this is all about implementation questions. Did you do what you said you were going to do or not? Here, they're having trouble implementing this sustainable ocean fishery strategy, or maybe they were going along okay and then they encountered some major issues. However, for this other strategy, trap rats on key islands, they're doing pretty well at the strategy level. And in fact, they've actually completed some of their activities. So you can track progress at the level of strategy, activity, or task. Again, you can assign people to this. So that's your implementation tracking. Then as Adrian was showing, you can develop objectives and indicators to track progress on specific results. So if we go back to that rat elimination theory of change or results chain, you can see we've got results that we want to achieve here, and we've got associated objectives and indicators, and you can report on specific measurements. So we've got measurements going back over time. We've got the desired future status we want to achieve. And then you can see whether or not you're achieving the status here of 0, because you want to catch 0 rats. So you can see that, yeah, you're making progress. You're catching fewer rats and traps, which suggests you're meeting your objectives there. So you can track progress on results. And then at the far right end of a results chain, target impact. Are we actually achieving the long-term impact on our targets and improving conservation health that we want to see? So we've got our targets here: coral reefs, sharks, seagrass beds. This is a different project, so we don't have the ray target that Adrian added. But you can see here, coral reefs are currently in good status. That's the current status, and then the future status is good as well. Whereas some others, like mangroves, they're really in poor condition right now, and they want to be ultimately in good condition. You can track all of that here. You can update your viability status, and then also there's a way to track health using indicators and rolling the health of indicators up to the health of your targets here, for example. So Again, there's ways to develop your work plans and track progress on the work plans, including budgets and expenses. You can track progress at the level of implementation, results, and target impact. And then we have a variety of tools that allow you to generate either sort of canned reports. These are built-in charts here in the dashboard that you can't customize yet. But we also have a large number of reporting tools, including spreadsheets. So for example, I'm just going to show you a spreadsheet view here. Here's a standard data view on strategy and activity progress, and you can develop custom views of that. For example, I just created a simple version of this that shows all my strategies and activities in the project that have major issues. If I want to, I can come in and let's say I want to see all strategies and activities. Now I can see every strategy and activity and monitoring activity in the project, and I can see how they're doing, who's the leader, what's the time frame, when was the last report. So you can generate reports like this. These can all be exported to Excel. Or if you prefer to see things in a Word document, we've got a bunch of reporting tools that allow you to develop and export reports in Word. So for example, the same type of content, if you click this button here, which I'm not going to do right now, but if you click that button, it'll run a report that generates a Word document from your Miradi content that looks more like this. So just a quick snapshot in a Word document that you can fully edit. And again, you can design 100-page strategic plans, or you can design quick one-page scorecards, however you want to use that. And then finally, I'm just going to show you the API. We have, this is just an example template. We have an API that allows you to pull all the data out of your Miradi project or program and report it in interactive dashboards like this. So this is just an example of all the data that can be pulled out of Miradi into an online interactive dashboard, both narrative content, images, reports at the level of a single project or multiple projects. You can really design these dashboards outside of Miradi however you want, but it pulls in the latest and greatest data from your Miradi project in here. So I think that's the end of the live demo. So I'll see if there's any questions. I'll just do a temperature check here. So we take any questions, we can go wherever you guys want to go next. The things that we were thinking could be interesting to do next, we have a bunch of examples of organizations from around the world that use Miradi. We just thought we'd pull out a few types of organizations that use Miradi, so you can see if you're interested in learning more about that. And then we also thought we could get you signed up with Miradi accounts to start playing around in there yourselves if you wanted to. So I'll stop for sort of pause and temperature check there.
I'd be curious to see the organizations that are making use of the software right now. And if you have examples of some projects, that'd be wonderful.
We do, yeah. I'm going to turn it over here to you in just a sec, Adrienne. Maybe I will start here. I think I'm not sharing my screen yet, right? Share. Okay. Are you seeing my slide deck again?
Yep, we are.
Okay, great. So like I said, it's used globally. We have about 500 organizations that have Miradi user accounts right now, wide range of usage. Some organizations have 800 users. Some organizations have 1 user. So, it's really wide range. We have about 100 organizations around the world that have their own team spaces or program spaces, meaning they have 1 or more projects that their organizations and partners are working on in a dedicated space for their organization. And we have about 15,000 Miradi user accounts. We get on average about 250 new signups a month. So those are just some quick numbers. And I'll say we have a real wide range of organizations that use Miradi. We just pulled out a few quick names here, just as an example. So some of the very large global conservation organizations like WWF, WCS, they have organizational Miradi licenses and hundreds of users within the organizations. We have large and small government organizations. For example, all of the Canadian Wildlife Service uses Miradi. They use it to develop their ecosystem monitoring and tracking programs. So all of the CWS uses Miradi. Parks Canada uses Miradi. Not all of Parks Canada, but I know we have a Parks Canada person on here. Can perhaps say more, but Parks Canada uses Miradi across the country, not in every park, but they do use it. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service uses Miradi. Adrian works with a few different groups through U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. USAID, before it went away, used Miradi for, I don't know, 12 years, 15 years, a long time across the world globe, and people are still, the partners who worked with USAID are still using Miradi. Chilean National Parks uses Miradi, US state wildlife plans, many First Nations and Aboriginal communities around the globe. So really wide range of landowners, government landowners. We have very small and medium-sized organizations that use Miradi, and then we have about 30 university courses that include Miradi in their instruction from around the world, and students use Miradi as part of their courses. So just a snapshot. I'm sure we're missing some, but just to give you a sense. And there's different types of conservation work and related work that makes use of Miradi. So yeah, I'm sure I missed some here, but protected area management, species conservation, land trusts in a variety of countries, zoos, we work quite a bit with zoos now, applied research efforts, and then also folks who are, well, groups that are responsible for really demonstrating that their landscapes are going to help address carbon issues, provide carbon credits, using theories of change, results chains, and Miradi to help them demonstrate that. Organizations interested in increasing their organizational sustainability are developing theories of change, showing how the work that they're going to do is going to lead them to more sustainable results, and developing impact assessments in Miradi. And then also funders who fund conservation and related work use Miradi to manage the work across their grantees and also help their grantees develop more effective plans for achieving what they want to achieve. So those are examples of the types of organizations. And I would ask if we could stop recording just briefly, if that's okay, since we are showing some content from